Hashem Yah, Bahashem Yahushua, Baruch Hashem Yahushua. Shalom, family. Today I want to talk about the Torah. And I want to talk about two aspects of the Torah. The stones and the heart, because this is where Torah was written. First on the stones, then now in these last days on the heart, as the Most High Yah prophesied he would do. But I want to kind of break it into two parts, because Moses or Mosheh was a representation of Torah, and Yehoshua or Joshua was a representation of Torah written on the heart, and Mosheh Torah written on stones. And we're going to go through scriptures to support that. And like I said, it's going to be two parts. I'm going to kind of focus on Moses or Mosheh in this first lesson here, because there is symbolic scripture in the Old Testament, and a lot of times people don't see it that way. They just look at what happened and just take it all literal, even though it literally occurred, but not seeing the spiritual significance of it or symbolic significance of what was happening. Okay, there were reasons why certain things occurred, and we'll kind of get into some of that, why Moshe wasn't able to go over to the promised land, which ties into the limitations of Torah written on the stones. The Torah written on the stones only took Israel so far, and there was a lot of rebellion in that environment where it was not internal to them but external. You had a lot of rebellion going on, which could only be rectified by the Torah written on the inside, in the heart, the spiritual awakening and the spiritual relationship with Yah, which then eliminates that rebellion and cuts it away, as symbolized by circumcision, from the heart, of man, so that they can then uphold the righteousness of the Torah. So we're just gonna kind of stick with Moshe in this video, and kind of discuss how he represented the Torah written on the stones. Now once the Israelites were delivered from Mizraim or Egypt, they went into the wilderness, and they hadn't been initially given Torah. That deliverance came pre-Torah, the deliverance from Mizraim. It came through the obedience of Mosheh to believe and obey what Yah had told him to do in regards to Pharaoh. And of course, Pharaoh, all of Pharaoh's actions at that point were dictated by Yah, because he's the one who made Pharaoh harden his heart so that he wouldn't let them go. And all of the plagues and everything came over the land. But this was before the Torah was written on stones or given to them, or any other laws were given. That deliverance came prior to that. And then we go back to Abraham, who was pre-Torah, predated Torah, and predated Israel. And Abraham was not an Israelite; he was a Shemite, but Israel came through him. But a covenant was made with Abraham too, and that probably for another video, because it ties into believing and having faith in Yah and getting the Torah written in your heart. But when the children of Israel got out of Egypt, and I'm going to give you an account, and this was before the law was given and the Ten Commandments were given, but it kind of showed you kind of what Moshe represented, and is a kind of a foreshadowing of what they were to do, because the law was given to Moshe to give to the people, so it kind of came through him. He was like a conduit to deliver it to the people. So once they came out of Egypt, and they were in the wilderness for a little while, they encountered Amalek. And that's going to be Exodus 17th chapter. I'm just going to cover some of this 8 through 13. they were countered Amalek, and Amalek came down to fight with them. Okay, because they saw them as invaders in the land, and this was a battle that they had to face, and they were instructed to fight with Amalek. Okay, and we'll kind of go through what happened, covering verses 8 through 13 of Exodus 17. Okay, and it reads, verse 8, and Amalek came and fought with Israel in Rephidim. And Mosheh said to Yehoshua, choose for us men and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I am stationing myself on top of the hill with the rod of Elohim in my hand. And Yehoshua did as Mosheh said to him, to fight with Amalek. And Mosheh, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. And it came to be when Mosheh held up his hand that Israel prevailed. And when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. So he had the rod of Elohim in his hand. Now, this is what he had as far as an oracle or a symbolic representation of Yah on him. Okay, this rod that he had, this staff that he had. Now that's going to, give way to the Torah, the Ark, and all kinds of things that were created subsequent to that. But he had this rod which represented the power of Yah, as the Torah represented the power of Yah once it had been given, right? But again, it was in possession of Mosheh. So when he let that down, Amalek started to win. Their prosperity ended when he held up Yah and held up, and symbolically holding up the commandments of Yah, holding up the righteousness of Yah, and the way that the people were supposed to live in obedience. Then they prospered. And we'll touch on that again when I get into Joshua's video, but let's look at this. So verse 12, but Moshe's hands were heavy, so they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. And Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on the one side and the other on the other side, and his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. And Yehoshua defeated Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. So Yehoshua, and we'll get into, like I said later, his representation and kind of tie this all together to show you what's going on here, the full picture. They defeated Amalek because Elohim was upheld. So they upheld, Mosheh, in the sense that they held his arm up, his hands up. So we look at that symbolic picture that you already see kind of what Moshe's purpose was and how he's symbolically being used, right? And again, we'll get into him getting the commandments on the stones and things of that nature, but they had to uphold, and this is what I'm getting at here. The Israel had to uphold the Most High Yah, his righteousness, his statutes, and commandments, in order to have success. Okay, this is the point. Okay, it was a foreshadowing to how they were going to have to live in order to succeed. Uphold Moshe's commandments to them, which came directly from Yah, right? Okay, so Children of Israel, after some time, they were still in the wilderness, but it was time for Most High Yah to start to give them the commandments. And he started talking to Mosheh and telling him, instructing him, gave him the 10 Commandments verbally, and told him some other things to tell the people. Okay. He gave him specific instructions to tell the people 10 Commandments and don't make any idols, specifically telling them, which is Israel's downfall, right? And even today, Israel's downfall is idolatry. That don't make any idols, any images of gold or silver or anything, okay? Don't do this. Other than that being what covered the first 2 commandments, it was also just a general commandment. Hey, don't make any idols. And Moshe instructed them in all this, and they were saying, okay, yeah, what you say we will do. They were commanded, to obey. And they said, oh, sure, we're going to do this. Okay. So then it was instructed for Moshe to come and Joshua came with him up the mountain. Joshua didn't go all the way up, but Moshe went up on the mountain. Okay. Children of Israel were too scared, and they were given commandments not to come too close, so they would be killed anyway. While Moshe got the commandments from Yah. So he was up on the mountain 40 days, 40 nights, and of course this was a problem for Israel. Okay, and we're gonna go to Exodus 32. Okay, 1 through 6. Now this is Moshe. He's up there getting commandments and instruction from Yah. Okay, Exodus 32, 1 through 6. Verse 1. When the people saw that Moshe was so long in coming down from the mountain, the people gathered together to Aaron and said to him, "Arise, make us mighty ones to go before us. For this Moshe, the man who brought us up out of the land of Mizraim, we do not know what has become of him." So they already breaking what was told them not to do. Because Mosiah said, tell them not to make any idols of gold or silver or anything. And they're ready to do this. And of course, Aaron, you told them, okay, give me your earrings and everything, all the gold you have. And you started melting it down and made them a calf. Okay. Verse 4, it says, he took this from their hand, little gold earrings and things they had, and formed it with an engraving tool and made a molded calf. And they said, this is your mighty one, O Israel, that brought you up out of the land of Mizraim. Okay, like I said, this is still Israel's problem to this day. Which is our Bajia, and having an image to say, oh, this is our deliverer. This image that's been concocted for us. Okay, so verse 5, and Aaron saw and built an altar before it, and Aaron called out and said, tomorrow is a festival to Yahuwah. And he rose early on the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. Okay, so they're already going astray. Okay, and I'm going to keep going and kind of point out some things that were happening here, because again, this is indicative of Israel's rebellion under Torah written on stones. That's when the Most High said, I'm going to make another covenant. I'm going to write it in their inward parts, okay? Because they broke the other one. And this is like the detail of what they did. And Moshe representing that symbolically, the Torah written on stones can only take Israel so far. It has to be in the heart in order to really receive the promise, right? So again, this is why Moshe couldn't go over into the promised land, because of what he symbolized. And there's some detail behind what he did, but again, it's going to point to the rebellion under Torah written on stones. Okay. So Exodus 32, I'm going to keep going, verse 7 through 12. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, get down, for your people whom you brought out of the land of Mizraim have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them. They have made themselves a molded calf. I mean, like I said, Most High just told them this. And bowed themselves to it and slaughtered to it and said, this is your mighty one, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Mizraim. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, I have seen this people, and see, it is a stiff-necked people. And now let me alone, that my wrath might burn against them, and I consume them, and I make of you a great nation. But Moshe pleaded with Yahuwah, his Elohim, and said, Yahuwah, why does your wrath burn against your people, whom you have brought out of the land of Mizraim with great power and with a strong hand? Why should the Mizrahites speak and say, for evil he brought them up out to kill them in the mountains, and to consume them from the face of the earth? Turn from the heat of your wrath and relent from this evil to your people. Okay, so Moses is interceding for them, trying to spare them, because they are already getting off on the wrong foot. Okay, falling into idolatry already. Okay, and being in Egypt that long, the Egyptians were idolaters, and there's a mixed multitude coming out of Mizraim. It was some Mizrahites that came with them. Okay, that probably had some influence in along those lines, because there were Egyptians mixed in with the Israelites when they came out. Okay, there were some that came with them, and the Bible tells us this. So let's keep going. Exodus 32. I'm not going to read all of this 13 through 19. I'm going to start verse 16. Okay. It says, and the tablets were the work of Elohim, and the writing was the writing of Elohim engraved on the tablets. Okay, because when Moshe was coming down, he had the tablets written on both sides by Elohim. The Ten Commandments were written on these tablets. He had them, okay, in his hand. This was the Torah written on stones, right? He had it when he was coming down out of the mountain. Verse 17, Yehoshua heard the noise of the people as they shouted, and he said to Moshe, a noise of battle in the camp. But he said, it's not the sound of those who shout of might, nor is it the sound of those who cry out in weakness, but the sound of singing that I hear. And it came to be, as soon as he came near the camp, that he saw the calf and the dancing. Moshe's displeasure burned, and he threw the tablets out of his hands and broke them at the foot of the mountain. This is something that Elohim had engraven with his own finger. And Moses just threw them down and shattered them. Now, this is symbolic of them breaking the covenant, them breaking the commandments, them not being able to abide by them, written on the stones. Now, of course, Mosheh is going to rewrite them, and we're going to get into that in the next video in regards to Yehoshua or Joshua, because his rewriting them the second time symbolized him, Mosheh, writing them in the heart. But these were broken, okay? He threw these tablets down. Mosheh did. Again, you see the rebellion. You see that the covenant is broken. It's like it's a foreshadowing. It's like it's a prophecy, even in that action, that these stones were broken. Okay. Now, Moshe had displeased Yah. Okay. Later on, this is why he couldn't go over. Okay. He was given a commandment that he did not obey. Okay, I'm gonna go there first, and this is Numbers. Okay, Numbers 28 through 12. I'm gonna go there, and then we'll kind of get back into Deuteronomy. But Numbers 20, 8 through 12. This is now there were two instances where Moses was commanded to give Israel water out of a rock. Okay, one when they kind of first came out of Egypt, and then another one later on when the 40 years were nearly up of dwelling in the wilderness, of course, because they were disobedient and they did not believe, and they didn't think they could take the land, and so they were commanded, and Most High condemned them, all of them except for Joshua and Caleb and the little ones that were too young to die in the wilderness and not even go over. Okay, again, indicative of Israel's rebellion with Torah written on stones. Okay, basically Joshua and Caleb are the only ones survived because of the purpose of Yehoshua, and we'll get into that because it really ties in, and there's a lot of symbolic significance there too. So okay, so children of Israel, they've totally disobeying left and right, but this is Moshe himself disobeying, okay? Because again, we're really pointing out, okay, rebellion or disobedience under Torah written on the stones, which was very prevalent in the camp, okay? And the reason why, like I said, most of them died in the wilderness, that except for Joshua and Caleb and the little ones, right? There was a certain age they were spared, but the certain age where they kind of had understanding and they knew the commandments and all that, they fell in the wilderness. Okay, so let's look at Numbers 28 through 12. Verse 8. This is Mosiah commanding Moshe what to do, because again the children of Israel were thirsty. And they were grumbling and whining and complaining about dying with thirst and all that. So Mosheh told Moshe to take the rod and assemble the congregation, you and your brother Aaron. And you shall speak to the rock before their eyes, and it shall give its water. And you shall bring water from them out of the rock and give them drink to the congregation and their livestock. Okay, so he just told Moses, listen, just take them before this rock and speak to it. That's all you got to do. And Moshe took the rod from before Yahuwah as he commanded him. And Moshe and Aaron assembled the assembly before the rock. And he said to them, not the rock, hear now, you rebels. Shall we bring water for you out of this rock? Then Moshe lifted his hand and struck the rock twice. So first of all, he talked to them and not the rock. Then he hit the rock. He wasn't instructed to do any of that. And we know Moshe is very specific, detail-oriented, and you have to follow his instructions to a T. And he didn't. But look at what Moshe said. He said, "You rebels," and that sums up, okay, the heart of Israel during this time. Rebels, just rebellious people. And like I said, the law written in the inward parts had not occurred yet. This is the perfection of it. This is what Yah was pointing to with all of this, that he was going to accomplish, okay? Because the first covenant was broken, okay? And that was symbolized by, like I say, Moshe throwing those tablets to the ground. So he hit the rock at verse 11. He struck it twice with his rod, and much water came out. The congregation and the livestock drank. But of course, Yahuwah was displeased with this. Yahuwah spoke to Moshe and Aaron, because you did not believe me. Okay, now this is important. Because belief is the key. This is what Abraham did. He believed. This is what Moshe did when he went to Egypt to talk to Pharaoh. He believed, right? This predates the Torah. So the belief is very important for the Torah to be enacted. He said, you didn't believe me to set me apart or glorify me in the eyes of the children of Israel. Okay. Therefore, you do not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. So, of course, Moshe and Aaron couldn't go over. But what they symbolize is what really prevented it. I mean, this was the incident when you look at why Yahuwah said what he did. But, of course, Moshe, he was trying to get over there anyway, trying to plead and get over there. But Most High just wasn't having it, because what he represented, which was the initial covenant of Torah written on the stones, okay, which is not the completion of it, where you can get the promise. You can't get the promise to this on the inside, and we'll prove that when we get into Joshua and tying it into the way we're supposed to be living and the promise that was made to us. But if you look at this, it says you not bring this assembly in. He couldn't bring them in. Now we're gonna go back to Deuteronomy. Most High Yah talking to Moshe, Deuteronomy 31, 16. Let's see. Yeah, 16 through 20. To kind of get a little more detail here. It says, and Yahuwah said to Moshe, see, you're about to sleep with your fathers, and this people shall rise and whore after the mighty ones of the strangers in the land, into the midst of which they shall enter, and forsake me, and break my covenant which I have made with them. So, I mean, this is a prophecy. This hasn't happened yet, as far as what Most High Yah sees them doing. He knows they're going to do it. Again, during this time, the Torah will be written on stones. I mean, even when Joshua went over, Torah is still written on stones, but there were symbolic, significant messages and events and scriptures that pointed to and foreshadowed the writing of Torah in the heart. Okay, that's why separation was made, and like I said, we'll get more into that. But look how rebellious they were. Look how rebellious they were. And this is the point of it all. Unless Yah's righteousness is written on the inside of you, in a spiritual sense, through a spiritual connection, okay, then nobody's going to obey this. Nobody's going to uphold righteous standard, because everything is outward, right? And nothing was done on the inside. And that's very important, because if you look at Ten Commandments, of course, you can see the righteousness there. But you look at the 613 laws in their totality, a lot of them, refer to things that don't even apply to us today. Okay, many of them, those laws, where you're talking about livestock and how to deal with servants and crops and things of that nature, we don't even have. Okay, but if spiritually you have righteousness written in your heart directly from Yah, and that His finger wrote it in your heart instead on some stones that are outside of you, then you can uphold the righteous standards. Then you can truly obtain the promise. Okay, so again, this law's on the outside, Torah's on the outside, not written on the inside. And here they go. Listen, this is what was going to go down. Verse 17, then my pleasure shall burn against them in that day, and I shall forsake them and hide my face from them. They shall be consumed. Many evils and distresses shall come upon them. I mean, we already know what's in Deuteronomy 28, like 15 through 68, right? And this is just continuing that. Basically, it's already been kind of covered at this point, but this is still talking about all of those things. Okay, the stresses will come upon them, and it shall be said in that day, is it not because our Elohim is not in our midst that these evils have come upon us? And I shall certainly hide my face in that day, because of all the evil which they have done, for they shall turn to other mighty ones. Again, the downfall of Israel was idolatry, and because you had Torah written on the outside, and they were rebellious, our forefathers, and even today. Okay, all the things that we have endured and still are enduring, we have to have that spiritual connection, and not some outward stuff that we are looking for. Okay. Verse 18. Okay, verse 19. And now write down this song. And this is a song that comes after this. It's a terrible song, because it has all of the misdeeds of Israel and what's going to come upon them. But it's a song that Most High expects us to remember. Verse 19. And now write down this song for yourselves, and teach it to the children of Israel. Put it in their mouth, so that this song's to me, and for a witness against the children of Israel. And I shall bring them to a land flowing with milk and honey, which I swore to their fathers, and they shall eat and be satisfied and be fat. And then they shall turn to other mighty ones, and they shall serve them, and scorn me, and break my covenant. Okay. Let's keep going. Deuteronomy 31. I'm not going to read all of this. I'll start at verse 26. Deuteronomy 31. Take this book of the Torah, and you shall place it beside the ark of the covenant of Yahuwah your Elohim, and it shall be there as a witness against you. For I myself know your rebellion, your stiff neck. See, while I am still alive with you today, you have been rebellious against Yahuwah. Then how much more after my death? That's Mosheh telling them, you've been rebellious and right in my face. And all of the commandments that we read and we been told, and you're supposed to be obeying, right? Verse 29 says, for I know that after my death you shall do very corruptly, and turn aside from the way which I have commanded you, and evil shall come to you in the latter days. We know all about that, right? Because you do what is evil in the eyes of Yahuwah, to provoke him through the work of your hands. Okay, so then Mosheh spoke the song. Now, I'm not going to go through this entire song that he wrote. I'm just going to stay around verses 16 through 24, because this sums up what Israel was doing. This sums up the rebellious nature of Israel without the Torah written on the inside. So if if it's on the outside of you, and it has been written in your heart, and you're just looking at it, and you're not living it, you're just going to be rebellious, period. Okay, a lot of things going to be occurring, a lot of things going to be said and done that are rebellious. Okay, because you're trying to live like our forefathers did, without Torah being written on the inside. And at the point the covenant was broken, of course, Yah laid some commandments down and some judgments down. You can't pick up something that was broken and say, well, now I'm going to live by this, when it's supposed to be written on the inside. Okay? That's the only way you're going to live Torah. It's written in the heart. And, they had inscriptions on the garments, things of that nature to look at, a tassel so they can remember things. But, again, it was all external. Because at that point, nothing was written on the inside, right? And they didn't do any of it. They were disobeying it. Okay. So, verse 16, Deuteronomy 32. They moved him to jealousy with foreign matters, with abominations. They provoked him. They slaughtered the demons, not Eloah, mighty ones that did not know, new ones who came lately, which your fathers did not fear. We know all about it, huh? You neglected the rock who brought you forth, and forgot the El who fathered you. And Yahuwah saw and despised because of the provocation of his sons and his daughters. And he said, let me have my face from them. Let me see what their end is, for they are a perverse generation, children of whom there is no trusting. Now, this is a song. This is a song, okay? That was written. And we actually should supposed to memorize. They made me jealous by what is not ill. They provoke me with their worthless matters. But I make them jealous by those who are no people. I provoke them with the foolish nation. And again, I've covered this foolish nation that just provokes rebellious Israelites to jealousy. And some people, if you tell them, hey, there are Gentiles that are going to make it in, they're going to get mad at you and may cuss you out. I mean, it's all happened to me. Threatening to do stuff to you. Because the jealousy has to be invoked. And again, the jealousy is only going to be invoked if you're rebellious. If you're not, then you will understand that Mosheh made a promise to Abraham that all nations shall be blessed, meaning that all who come to Mosheh will not be turned away. It says in the Old and New Testament. And again, as pointed out in other videos, but this is why this opened the door for the promise to Abraham, as Shaul actually talked about. This opened the door. This disobedience of Israel opened the door. Okay. Because it says here, I'm going to make them jealous by those who are no people. Of course, when they're out there talking about, then they're nothing but spittle and all that, our brothers will be out here in the street. Then they're saying that they're nothing but spittle. Yes, but it says they were no people. So they were like spittles. They were nothing to me. But, okay. Basically, hey, I'm provoking jealousy with these people. I'm going to call them people who didn't call me. I'm going to make myself known to these people who never searched me out. Now, this is in the Bible. This is in the Old Testament. And we're not talking about Israelites here. Okay? Because the Israelites are the ones that's in trouble. And they're the ones that's going to be provoked to jealousy by those who are not a people. So those who are not Israelites. Okay? It's not hard to see this. You can't make these people jealous. I mean, you're not going to make Israelites jealous with Israelites. Because, of course, they understand, and that's who they want, and that's who they know were the chosen people. Okay? So, this is it. Here it is. I mean, this is all this rebellion, and the Torah's written on the outside, and they weren't checking for it. They were doing what they wanted to do. Verse 22, a fire was kindled in my wrath and burned to the bottom of Sheol, and consumes the earth, and is increased, and sets on fire the foundations of the mountains. I gather evils upon them. I use my arrows upon them. And again, like I stated before, everything that's happening to us, Mosheh is doing. People want to look at the instrument, the blunt instrument, or the weapon that was used against us, and focus on that instead of being focused on ourselves. That Mosheh is the one doing it. Because of our disobedience, he's the one, not a certain group. It is Yah himself. He uses who he's going to use. But throughout history, he's used a lot of people, a lot of different peoples, right? Hamites used a lot, and of course, all these were brothers, really, because if you think about Shem, Ham, and Yafet, I mean, they were brothers. But I mean, these are the nations that were brought against us because of our disobedience, and the Most High is the one calling the shots. Okay. So he's the one doing it. It says, I gather evils upon them. I use my arrows upon them. So you can't be mad at the arrow. Hollering at the arrow when, we shouldn't make ourselves target for any arrows. Verse 24, wasted by scarcity of food, consumed by heat, bitter destruction, teeth of beasts I should send upon them, with poison of serpents of the dust. I mean, all this has happened throughout history to us. The sword bereaves them from the outside and fear from within, both young man and maiden, nurse and child, and man of gray hairs. Doesn't matter. Everybody. I said I should blow them away. I should make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. And, we out here not even knowing who we are. And many other groups don't know who we are. There are those who know. But for the most part, we still waking up to who we even are because we've been erased. When you've got people rewriting history just to hide us, well, then this is some serious business here. And this was something that was handed down by Yah himself. Okay? So, I just wanted to cover this and not, take up too much time. We're talking about Moses first again. Torah written on stones, and you see all this rebellion, all these problems. Moses himself had a rebellion when he didn't do as Yah commanded. He couldn't go over. I mean, he was allowed to see it, but he wasn't able to go over into there because Joshua went. But we'll tie in some things there on the next video, cover Joshua and some of the spiritual and symbolic clues that point to today and how we're supposed to be living today and how that all ties together. But, understand it's not complete. The story is not complete when we're just looking at so-called Old Testament. It is an incomplete story because we're still living it. We're still living it today. And there are things that we have to do. And you can't pick up something that was broken and try to live it in that same way when Yah himself said, I'm making another one, not according to the old. It'll be written on the inside. And again, symbolically, that's what Joshua's going to represent when he is, taking the land, getting the promise. Even though they rebelled even after that and led to where we are now, but it was a foreshadowing, okay? And we'll cover it. There's some scriptures in the New Testament that ties it all together. That's why it's important to tie everything in and see the connections and not dismiss something just because somebody told you to dismiss it without examining it and saying, okay, where can I look and see the connection here and how it's coming together, okay? All right, so again, as I said before, study, show yourself approved is good. Read some of these books. Deuteronomy is good, Numbers, because there's a lot of detail there, and you can see and start piecing together the symbolic process here of what's going on and how the plan is being completed through Yahushua, and we'll see that. And how everything still ties together, and nothing is lost. Okay, when you look to the new, so-called new, and able to tie back to the initial promise to Abraham and how that all comes together. But again, Mosheh representing the Torah on stones. Okay, so study, show yourself approved. Hope this is kind of help you in some ways to kind of start seeing the symbolic nature of things. So until next time, hallelujah, and may Yah add a blessing to his word.